Hey y'all, welcome to Geek Freaks. I am Frank, and today I'm joined by Jonathan.
Hey yo.
And we have a lot to cover today, a bunch to cover today. We have a bunch of small pieces of news. We have a review for both Wicked and Gladiator 2. We have an interview with the wonderful Megan from Vigilante Vibes. And we're going to be talking about Fan Expo, which we're going to be at next week. So if you guys are in the San Francisco area and you guys want to hang out, let us know. Jonathan, how you doing today, man?
I'm great. How you doing?
Doing good. We got Thanksgiving this week. Outside of just visiting every other family, what are some of the traditions you like the most about Thanksgiving?
As kids, we used to do Black Friday real big. That was like, back in the early 2000s, it was a hot thing to do anyways. There were super good deals that you'd have to go compete for. Yeah. Nowadays, I am not excited about the shopping. I don't like how that's the whole holiday is shopping nowadays. So instead of doing that, me and my family usually spend that day to decorate. So we put up all our whatever decorations we don't already have up, which my wife is ready to start today. I already pulled everything out of the garage. It's in the corner of the living room. But yeah, it's a better way to spend the day, together and doing something, fun versus competing for a deal on a gift that somebody probably doesn't need anyways. Yeah. But this year, on top of at least doing some of that in the morning, we're going to be going to Fan Expo that day, Black Friday. So that'll be fun too.
What is the thing you're looking forward to the most at Fan Expo?
I got to meet Kate Mulgrew. She's going to be there. Yeah. Got to get a photo with her, maybe an autograph. There's a lot of good actors that are going to be there, but she's definitely top of my list.
What's the one question you'd want to ask Kate?
Oh, so I kind of want to ask her. I'm going to geek out and I'll probably forget I get so nervous in front of celebrities and actors and stuff.
We got to break that shit.
Right. I'll just hand her a note shaking like, hey, can you read this? But I kind of want to ask her, hey, we know you from Star Trek. You were also really good in Orange is the New Black. Obviously, a lot of people liked her there. But what is the role or character that you really liked that you don't think got as much appreciation or attention?
Yeah, exposure.
Exposure. Yeah. Because, I want to go see, what was your favorite movie that you acted in? I want to go watch it. I want to look it up. I'm sure I could look up, all the things that she's been in, but, which one mattered the most to you or was the most fun to produce or something like that. And, give me a short list. I'll start watching them. That's
a really good one. Kate Mulgrew, I think, is one of the many Star Trek actors who started out not a big fan of Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And then after leaving the show and starting to see the impact that her character has, especially her character on women, young women and stuff like that. And then now finding a new appreciation for it, there's something there. And so that would be a really good question for her. Personally, I would love to talk with Joseph Quinn's going to be there, who is playing the Human Torch. We just saw him in Gladiator. And Charlie Cox, who plays Daredevil. And I literally bought this shirt just in case I meet him. And I actually have a Fantastic 412 for Joseph Quinn. So there's going to be a lot of panels at this thing. There's going to be a lot of things to do. And the schedule just released today as we're recording. One of the things I'm excited for is they're going to have multiple panels on playing D&D. And one of them is how to DM. So I'm going to have you guys go to the food court while I watch that. You guys are going to get me hints.
Okay. I was like, you should have us watch it all too so that we understand how hard it is, how stressful it is.
You know what? Actually, actually, go front row, guys. You use my press passes or whatever. We'll go to the front row.
That's one thing, though, that I've learned, going to more Comic-Cons. And especially if you haven't been to one, you probably have no idea why people would sit in a panel and watch it. To me, that's definitely one of the highlights is going to a panel.
My favorite part. Yeah.
Yeah. You if you get to meet an actor, you're going to ask them maybe one question, hurry up and get a picture, and then get the hell out of the way. There's a line of people behind you that want to, be face to face with this actor for a minute. Yeah. So you're not going to spend a lot of time with them. But when they're there on stage, you get to see them joke around and answer a lot of questions and get a little bit more, exposure of, who they really are. You'd never really heard them talk about what they felt about that character or something like that, or how the filming process went for them. So all that kind of stuff, it just gives you a lot more behind the scenes. And sure, you can look it up on YouTube, but it's a lot more fun to be in the room.
It is, yeah. And a lot of times you can ask the question yourself during these panels and stuff. Yeah. But whenever there's a convention going on, or if Thomas is going down to a convention, we'll share a lot of those pictures too. We love to share pictures from the convention, not just because it's hey, check out this convention, but also check out the artists that are here. Check out the actors that you love sharing stuff that you've never heard from before. So make sure you follow us on all those social media places. And we're going to record from the convention itself, probably at the Airbnb afterwards when we're tired and crashed.
We're out.
But we're going to be sharing a lot of stuff. Probably going to be doing 2 episodes as we do for a lot of these bigger conventions. It should be a blast, and I'm really excited for it. All right, Jalen, we are going to get into the news. We're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. We're going to be reviewing Wicked, Gladiator 2, and interviewing Megan from Vigilante Vibes. If you guys want to bounce around, we have the timestamps in the description. So you go and press one of those. It should jump you right to that if I've done it right. I've been working on that. But let's go ahead and get into the news. Jonathan, do you remember the movies, the Highlander movies?
No, I remember of them. I know there's so many like pop culture references to them.
Yeah.
But I don't think if I watched them, I must have been less than 10.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I'm sure we watched it a lot when like you were a baby kind of thing, and just it was like always on TV. There's like 7 of them. So, and the first one had Sean Connery, which is the reason I tuned in for sure. But the idea is that it's like these soldiers that exist through time and kill each other off. It kind of reminds me of The One, actually. Now I'm thinking about it, where like where you're like killing other people and becoming stronger yourself. Well, they're rebooting the franchise, and they tapped in the biggest badass actor you could think of. Jonathan, can you think of that badass actor? It's not Idris Elba. Henry Cavill. They got Henry Cavill's going to be running this new franchise because, of course, he is. He does everything else. And we got some details on this. First off, they tapped the director, Chad Stahelski, to be directing this. So it's going to be like John Wick. And Cavill's going to be playing a 500-year-old swords master who's an expert at martial arts. And it's set in a beyond present day New York and Hong Kong. It's going to have a romance. It's going to have action, all kinds of stuff. Henry Cavill himself said he's been practicing on his sword play so much for this movie, it'll be beyond anything you saw in The Witcher. So next level stuff. This original movie came out in 86. It was a cult classic. And they made a bunch of different copies of this. They're going to start filming in 2025, and this one's going to release in 2026, 30 years after the first movie. So 30 years. No, 40 years after the first movie. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm so ancient. Jesus.
That's crazy.
What do you think Henry Cavill's in too many things nowadays?
No, not enough. Keep going,
Right
dude. Especially because his fandom, the fact that he's already like practicing. It sounds like, by the way you said that, he was practicing when he heard that they're writing a script for it before he even got cast for it. He's like, no, I'm going to be ready. Like, don't worry, I'll have my own lines ready for the audition kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's excited about it makes me excited to see him play that character.
Yeah, I love that about him. And there's a few other actors that are the same way, where because he's a fan of the things he's like, that's the big thing with Witcher 2. Because he's a fan of it, it makes me more excited for the project. I follow the project from start to finish more.
Mm-hmm.
I got to give a big shout out to Iman Vellani, who plays Miss Marvel for the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Miss Marvel is an okay character. Like, it's not that big of a deal in the comic books, whatever. I really like her in the video games. But because Iman Vellani is straight up an MCU fan, loves the MCU, that and how excited she was just to be on set next to like, oh my God, Iron Man or whatever. That is so freaking fun. And then I'm way more excited to see what she does with Young Avengers, when not only are we seeing her like recruit the Young Avengers, but we're also seeing her excited to see Haley Steinfeld as Hawkeye. And that's just a really fun combo. Yeah. So I think that's what we need out of our stars. And that's why I think Henry Cavill deserves to be in so many things, because it's fun to be on this adventure with them. And I think we're in a world now where stardom isn't about being in the big movies. It's about just being likable and people following you through your other projects. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And like how we've seen before, like Chris Pratt doing, really good as Star-Lord and has all this success, but then he will use that to go see kids in the hospital and stuff like that. And just kind of just like make their day. And it's like, that's the kind of person that you want to support, whether he's acting in a movie that you're going to like or not. It makes you want to go see his movies, even if they're not, maybe it's a romance and not him as Star-Lord kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. Like, it's fun to be able to follow an actor that you like because you like how they are, not as a person, versus just liking the characters they've played.
We're far more attached. I know there's that parasocial relationship where people feel like they actually know the person, and that's a problem. But there is an attachment to the actors now that I think wasn't there before. And I think for the most part, that's a good thing, because the actors that actually want to engage with us, I think, reap the rewards more.
Yeah, they have the opportunity. Like, there's plenty of actors where I like watching their movies and I don't know their personal character at all. Like Jason Statham, when you're talking about these like Jean-Claude Van Damme type movies, like, well, yeah, that's pretty much all he makes. And they're usually pretty good. They're not amazing, but I'll watch them. I really like The Beekeeper, even though it was kind of cheesy, but you know that going into it. But at the same time, I don't know if he's, at an animal shelter on the weekends, or if he beats his kids. I really don't know, but but I watch his movies because I do like his acting.
That's usually not something you post on Instagram. I'm just throwing that out there.
Right. Well, I don't know. I'm sure there's some people.
I'm sure there are. Yeah, he's a good call out though. He's kind of the guy that we would follow in the normal situation, right? That would be just like your normal action star that was just like, yeah, whatever, it's a Jason movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, go check that out. Next up, let's talk about Daniel Craig. He's in talks to play somebody named Sergeant Rock, which is a DC character from back in the old days. And I did not know anything about Sergeant Rock. It's a DC comic book character. I had to do some research on him. So here is the deal with DC Rock. I'm sorry, with Sergeant Rock.
Sergeant Rock.
He is a World War II type hero. He was just like a captain in the army, and would most notably be like kind of their G.I. Joe in DC comic books. Would have those missions where they have to go in and save somebody from some Kaiser or whatever and save the day. And then there are even some later comic books where they had him fight zombies. So I think they're going to stick to the original version of this. And I think this is going to be DC's kind of Wonder Woman-esque movie. Remember that first Wonder Woman movie, how good that was?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe this is DC's like a second attempt at that.
That makes more sense. I was trying to think like, are they trying to do a DC version of Captain America? But he doesn't look like that because Captain America, before he is a soldier, he is more a moral compass. He's all about integrity and
too. Yeah.
So this guy doesn't look like he's playing that role, but he actually kind of reminds me of Sergeant Hatred from what's that show with the two brothers, Venture Brothers. Yeah, just from the comic covers and stuff like that. But yeah, that'll be interesting. I did like Wonder Woman, and to see them embrace this like kind of retro character. I wonder how they're gonna kind of update him to modern expectations, I guess. Yeah.
And from my understanding, he's never been brought to the future. So I think this is going to be taking place during World War II. So,
okay.
Yeah. So then I'm wondering if they're going to be using him to showcase an earlier version of maybe the Justice Society. So he could be this like normal soldier. Think of like a Fury, from Marvel. He's like a normal soldier who just happens to be like the best captain. And at some point, the U.S. Army's like, look, we're finding out that there's a lot of these people with abilities now. And we'd like to bring them into the military and help us out in fighting Hitler. And so they're like, can you run this team? So then he's put in charge of assembling this like ragtag group of like brand new superheroes. And like, that's where you get the very first version of Green Lantern coming in with Alan Scott and stuff like that. And maybe he's kind of, now I'm kind of writing a movie in my head that I think would be pretty fun. But
yeah, that'd be cool.
It'd be a time period, and it would be divorce of the normal DCU only referenced in the newer movies that we're seeing. Do you think that's feasible for a brand new, franchise that they're building here? Multiverse.
Yeah, I don't think they have much. I mean, they don't have roots planted yet, so now's the time to experiment a little bit. Yeah, so I think try it and see how it goes. If the fans like it, then you can keep going in that direction. But yeah, I don't think there's much for them to lose at this point.
Yeah, and then you get somebody like Daniel Craig who has just so much street appeal that he could play this army type character. It doesn't have to be a DC movie. And it's very likely that you'll watch it in the first place just because of what he does with other roles. It'll be interesting to see where they can go with this. I know there's also Creature Commandos that I think has some ties with World War II, where they basically made a monster squad, and he could be definitely like the one that takes care of them or something like that. It'd be very interesting.
I'm kind of surprised to see them interested in going back to a World War II story. I feel like that's been told so many times that, it's time to look for something different, but I don't know.
Do you think that maybe they go back to World War II so often, especially in times like this, because you can't mess it up? Like Hitler's bad.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about pissing people off.
Yeah, but it's usually like that. It's so binary too. So if we're going to tell this story again, maybe tell it where we're seeing a resistance building within the Nazi party or something like that, where they're like, hey.
Valkyrie. Yeah.
Have we seen that already? I don't remember.
Yeah, Tom Cruise.
Okay. Never mind. something different. Rewrite the script because we've seen it too many times.
But you're right. I think the reason that they go back to is because they want it to be binary. I think they want it to. I think they want to make movies sometimes where they're just like, we don't need to have people mad at us online, so we just showed them shooting Nazis, and like nobody's ever going to be mad about that. And the people who are in the so fringe that it's not a problem, I think.
And they're in the money making business. They need to make money, and when you swing for the fences, sometimes you lose $400 million. And if you do something safe like that, you spend $100 million and you recoup 120. you did pretty good. So they're probably just aiming for a relatively safe bet. A good name, well-known actor playing a pretty safe character will probably be profitable in the end.
Yeah, it reminds me actually, now that we're talking about it with the rest of the DC, we've been talking about how good the casting has been because it looks so comic book accurate. For the most part, Jon Stewart, I know that there's been some colorization problems they've had with him, but for the most part, it's been pretty accurate. And I wonder, there's that term that just makes me sick to my stomach, but it's not without merit, is that go woke, go broke thing. And we don't normally talk about politics on this podcast. Don't worry, we're not going there, but maybe they are trying to like if we just stick to the source material, then you guys can't blame us for anything. So maybe that's also part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, maybe there's been a little bit too, I don't know what DC's been making. It's such a blur, but maybe they've been a little bit too experimental and they kind of want to go back to, like you're saying, binary. Like this is just soldiers and shooting and kind of at least have some balance in their, what they have to offer.
Yeah, because I know for a fact that Superman, the new movie, is going to be about the class struggle a little bit more than that's where the privilege is at in class struggle, because he comes from Krypton where his family was very wealthy and then on Kansas they were not. And that's something that should be pretty universal. There's very few people that be like, wait a minute, what about the rich guys? That's something that we don't know. I'm not really worried about Bill Gates picketing outside of DC. So I think we're seeing that at the DCU, and I think that might be the smart move. Like, this, don't let anybody down, don't alienate anybody, but just kind of sticking to the source material. It's kind of what we all wanted, anyways. So I think there's some merit there. That'll be interesting if we could have that conversation without everybody freaking out. We'll see.
We'll see. They'll find something to hate on.
Of course, it'll be Geek Freaks. Come hate on us, guys. Just click on the link.
There you
go. Alan Tudyk, which is it Tudyk or Tudyk? I always mess it up.
I believe.
Tudyk, thank you. Is going to be returning to play Clayface, because he plays Clayface in the Harley Quinn series, Fantastic series, but he's going to be returning to play it in Creature Commandos. And in an interview, it was very interesting. He talks about how, well, in Harley Quinn, he plays it as like a real thespian actor, where he's like, high fluting talking. And then in this one, they're like, you got to play the dark serial killer version of Clayface. So he's like really evil and stuff like that. And he's so freaking talented, this guy. It's amazing.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I see him on TikTok where every once in a while he'll start, or somebody will ask him like to voice his characters that he's played before, and they start naming them off, and he'll start doing just small lines from him. I'm like, oh my god, I did not know he was half of these characters from these. I mean, I know what I've seen him in live action, but all these animated characters that he's played, it's amazing. He's just such a good voice actor.
I can't help but you brought it up off mic, but Knight's Tale. That's where we probably remember him the most from.
Oh yeah, that's the first time I ever seen his face, and that's still one of my favorite movies for sure. Yeah, but yeah, he's such a fun character in that too.
I think I first was introduced to him through Firefly. He's the pilot, and then unfortunately died in the movie version of it. So we're gonna get a lot more Alan Tudyk in the MCU or in the DCU. And James Gunn, when he first announced the DCU, mentioned that if you play a role somewhere else, you play it the entire way through. So if there's a live action version of Clayface, which I know will still be CGI, Alan's going to return for that too, which is going to be really cool. And there are hints that there's a mystery role, in Superman that he's been on set for. So maybe we'll get Clayface, which is the Batman villain, in Superman for a little bit, which, hey, that'll be interesting to see how Superman can handle him.
Yeah.
Mighty Mouse is getting a movie, and it's being done by Ryan Reynolds' production company, Maximum Effort, which I love that he named his production company Maximum Effort. Paramount's the one greenlighting this, and Mighty Mouse is from the 1940s. Very
That's
old
crazy.
IP. Now, you don't remember this at all, right? Mighty Mouse?
I kind of remember him like a buff little mouse with a Superman cape, right?
Yeah. I remember the theme song a little bit. Yeah, I'll have to play some of it here in the podcast.
Yeah. Is it like, here he comes to save the day? Is that not Mighty Mouse?
Yeah, you nailed it, Jonathan. Yeah, that is it. You nailed it. But yeah, so they're making this again, and I don't think that there's anything crazy about, like, there's nothing really interesting about Mighty Mouse except for he's just like, it's Mickey Mouse, but he's Superman too. But the fact that the IP was out there and you cannot worry about the copyright is pretty big. The first airing was in 1942 with The Mouse of Tomorrow. Ryan Reynolds is freaking awesome though. Have you watched Welcome to Wrexham yet?
Not much of it. Probably, I think I watched 4 or 5 episodes, but not the whole thing.
He's one of those guys that, again, we were talking about before, where you follow people on social media first and then go to see their movies. I am at the point now where I'll watch anything Ryan Reynolds is in, just because I see the efforts that he's putting into it. And there's a spinoff to Welcome to Wrexham, which I think your wife would be very interested in. Robert McElhenney and Eva Longoria bought a team in Mexico, and they're doing the same thing with it. They're revitalizing the entire town in Mexico, making the team big and stuff like that. So that's so awesome that he's spreading that love, and just he's such a good businessman. It's crazy.
Did you go watch the movie If?
No, because I'm waiting for it to be on HBO.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it looked a little iffy.
Yeah, I tried to, like, those kids ones, it has to take a lot for me to go watch it. Like, I just,
Yeah,
it was tough. For me to watch Wicked was like, okay, I'm not a fan of musicals at all. Let me give this a shot just because it's a big deal. I was pleasantly surprised, actually.
That's good.
Even,
Yeah, I have a coworker that definitely would not like that kind of a movie, but he went because his girlfriend wanted to see it, and he's like, I usually don't watch that kind of stuff, especially if it's a musical, but it wasn't that bad. I was like, okay, in that case, it must be a really good movie for you to come out saying that. I'm
messaging Thomas, and we'll get into the Wicked thing here pretty soon, but messaging Thomas is like, I hate all the singing. It's so stupid. I hate all the singing stuff. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But then like everything that's not singing in that movie, fantastic. So it's if you're a musical fan, like this has got to be insanely good for you.
What kills me is we are all musical fans. We grew up as musical fans. You didn't watch Aladdin and sing along, Lion King, Mulan, all those movies. Imagine them re-aired now without the musical aspects, and they would be a complete flop. We loved musicals as a kid, and I still rewatch these movies all the time. I sing along with Ariel, but it's something about it being live action and feeling more like a play that makes it a little more tongue in cheek or something like that.
So cringy to me. It's just like, oh man, that's rough to watch.
Yeah, it's funny though. Sorry, they just gotta animate it.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's the trick. That actually probably not a terrible idea. Next on the docket, so Arcane just finished, and we're gonna put the review out for Arcane next week. We've been just behind on everything else. A lot of news going on. We have Fan Expo coming up, but they did talk recently with the League of Legends. What is it called?
Rare
content creators, I guess. That they're going to be making some more shows, and they're going to be based on 3 other territories: Demacia, Ionia, and Noxus. Do you know how big the lore is behind League of Legends? I know you played the game a while back. Can you imagine how big the lore is?
I have no idea. I did actually see your TikTok too, explaining all this stuff. And was like, I didn't think that there was that much to go into it. Like somebody just drew up a character and gave him a name, right? No, they made an entire world that character came from.
Yeah. So there used to be these newsletters that they'd put out. Like it would be a newsletter in world. Somebody actually like, oh, this day in Demacia, this is going on. And that developed it. And then they kept expanding it. There are now literally music videos by pop artists that exist in these worlds that end up becoming chart breakers in real life.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's that big. Let me just explain these 3 new territories that these shows are going to be in. And it'll be a while before they're made, but so we kind of know. So we have Noxus, which is kind of the general bad guy. In the early days, it used to be just general bad guys. They were always in a war with Demacia. Now they're in the war with other people. They are kind of Klingon-y in the fact that, like, if you want to be in power, it's because you're the strongest person in town. Mm-hmm. And that's just how it is. They're very much like, everything's awesome, big axes. It's that kind of thing, as you'd expect. Yeah. We have Ionia, which is an island nation that is somewhat inspired by like Japan and very nature-based. And, they live in these beautiful villages and stuff. And a lot of the kind of spiritual samurai characters kind of come from there. Mm-hmm. And then we have Demacia, my personal favorite. And that is a very much marble and gold, big fantasy, high fantasy city. But the best thing about that place is it's absolutely gorgeous. It'll stun any visitor, but they outlaw magic. And they literally have, I think they're called mage hunters that are like the secret police. We're bringing up a lot of old Germany stuff right now. The secret police that go around hunting down any magic users. And Garen, the main general for Demacia, like the hero of Demacia, his sister is a mage, Lux. Dang. And so it's just, there's like this whole mix of like law and order and then like what's good and what's bad and accepting magic and stuff. So there's a lot of great stories to tell there. And the lore of Runeterra, which is the world that League of Legends takes place in, can really be expanded upon. Of those 3 zones I just explained, is there anything in particular you'd want to explore in those?
Oh man, they all sound cool. They all sound so unique. I like, the Noxus, the warlike people, because I don't know, like you're saying, it's like Klingons, or it reminds me of the Herodians. Like you just want to see them. You don't necessarily want to see them succeed, but you want to see them eating themselves, I think. Like
the power struggles within. Like the Sith type of thing.
One guy steps up and kills the leader, and now he's in charge, and let's see how long he can hold power, kind of thing. That's always always fun to see. But yeah, I think just like the different dynamics between each of the worlds would be cool. But question though is, are these all going to be together, or is this going to be 3 separate series that we see?
So they didn't say that. They just said that those are the places we're going to be visiting in the next and future series. So we don't know if it's going to be one series with all of them. If it is one series with all of them, it'll be likely Demacia and Noxus. They used to be in a big war. They could bring that back. That would easily be a thing that would do well. Mm-hmm. And Noxus totally embraces magic. You could. That's the thing. It's like it's all about strength. So it doesn't matter your race, what you do, how you got there. They will accept anybody who's stronger. And so while Demacia looks like, oh, what a safe place to live, they don't have knives whizzing by your head. If you're the wrong kind of person, you're alienated. Versus Noxus, who will take you in, you just have to stand on your own 2 feet in a lot of ways. So it's a really cool dichotomy of 2 different nations. And you're like, wait, which one's the good ones?
Yeah. Right? The ones that let you be free, or the ones that, force you to be?
Yeah, you'll be safe because we'll have you under our hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then by that account, Ionia is very much freedom and just like nobody's going to hurt you because you're on your own and it's beautiful out there. And Runeterra it's got places that are all Viking based and all snow and ice. And in the same world, they have an entire pirate kingdom. It's just literally on pirates, and then they have a shy or whatever. It's all kinds of different places. A shy is Game of Thrones. But yeah, it's really neat to see how they've made this world where like any kind of video game kind of character you want to make could exist in this world in one way or another.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to explore that more. GameStop. They announced back in August they're going to be bringing back retro games, and now we have some clarification on this. They're going to be working with the company Limited Games. No, sorry, Limited Run Games. Kevin, who might be listening to this, would be freaking out of this because he's a big fan of the company. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be bringing back select games for the NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color, and Sega Genesis. They're going to be there, say they'll get like 100 per store, and that is it. They don't make any more, and that's just how Limited Run works, obviously with that name. Some of the games that they've already announced, I know Jurassic Park was one of them, Worms Armageddon for Game Boy Color, Rendering Ranger R2 for Super Nintendo, and let's see, what do we have here? A Boy and His Blob, Trouble in Bloblonia for NES, so old school games. Do you think this is a good move to keep the company's doors open, or is it just a nostalgia hit for as like a death rattle last ditch effort?
I definitely think it's a last ditch effort. Like they're trying, whatever they can. Now it kind of depends on how much money they sink into this venture. Like if they're going to put all their eggs in this basket and it fails, they're out of business. Then yeah, that's risky, and obviously they must be really desperate if that's the case. But if this is just a drop in the hat, hey, we're going to release some of these, see if they catch on fire, or if they just sell like normal and not a big deal. It's a good way to test the market. If this becomes viral and super hot and everybody wants all of these, and these aren't super well named. I mean, maybe Jurassic Park is recognizable. I don't know the other two. So if it does really well, then they might be like, hey, you know what? We're going to do a program where we release, a different game a month or something like that. It's only going to be in store. It's always going to be a limited run. So then they would have a consistent source of new revenue, fresh revenue from all the collectors. The one caveat, I don't know. I mean, collectors, I guess, are different than most like gamers, but we have some of these old vintage consoles, but I don't think a lot of people would. So I wonder if at some point they'll get into the business of selling vintage, like original, or I mean, they probably do some stores, but also reproducing like the original Game Boy Color and things like that.
There are a lot of, matter of fact, there's a new one coming out this coming month. There are a lot of companies now that are reproducing consoles that can play like Super Nintendo games. There's one for the N64 coming out that'll play it in 4K. And it is not a new N64. It's a computer. It's a device that can play it. Yeah. They have to specifically say it that way. Like it'll play those cartridges. Basically, we made an N64. And so there is a market for that. I just don't know how big it is yet. And then there's the balance of, well, maybe you're capturing our generation, but is that how you keep those doors open? You need to capture the younger generation. And are they into physical media at all? I don't think so.
I don't know if they're are they a business for the younger generation? I think they're at the point where nostalgia is the only thing keeping their doors open, unfortunately. But yeah, I see what you're saying. For the long-term future, I mean, yeah, maybe this will keep them open for 10 more years, but for the long-term future, they do have to pivot towards something new. Nostalgia is only going to, once you've bought the 5 or 10 or 50, games that you really liked from your childhood, then you're done feeding money into their machine, and they're going to need a new source of revenue. So yeah, I think that's a good point, that at some point soon they're going to have to pivot to something new. And it's kind of hard because most all gaming and entertainment is all online nowadays. So I think a physical store for it is kind of not necessary anymore.
What would you do to save the GameStop company?
I would use the brand, completely pivot it into an arcade. You would be the GameStop One Stop or something like that, where you come here, you can buy the games if you want. We'll have a small corner where we're actually selling the newest game that's out there, but we're also a lounge area, and where you can come and hang out and play with your friends. You don't have to have it at home and go sit on your friend's couch or whatever. You come here after school and play whatever games we got, and part of the store can be an old school arcade too. I don't know.
I do see what you're saying there, but I don't know if that's enough turnaround with customers, because then we get to that problem where it's like kids are hanging out too much and not spending money. The Borders problem. Remember the Borders bookstore? I don't know if I ever bought a book from those people. I know I've read plenty of them there. Yeah. Oh man, those poor guys. But I would like to see, and I know they do it a little bit now, they just don't advertise it at all. Go full Pokemon cards. It's time to, do what the comic book stores do when they need to keep the doors open. They go full Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering. And GameStop, it's right there in the name. Just go for it. Just embrace the games, and then bring in tournament tables and stuff like that. And if you were a partner with Pokemon or Wizard of the Coast, and make it a stop that has exclusive drops at GameStop, or make it a Pokestop for your Pokemon Go, I think they could really do that. But make GameStop a place for physical, like in-person gaming, not just video games. So you got tabletop gaming, you can get your D&D stuff there. Much like how comic book stores, when they're desperate to keep the doors open, they embrace cards a lot too. I know my comic book store has gone way overboard with that.
Yeah, the whole floor is just tables.
Yeah, there's like the back walls where we do comic books, like not what used to be, but okay.
Yeah, if you want a comic, ask us and we'll see if we got it in a box somewhere.
That is so stinking true. Do you think that would be feasible for a company that big as GameStop?
I think it would be an easy thing to do a slow rollout on. So, I mean, it would start with one of your small shelves in the corner, start stocking it with those card games or board games or whatever. And then, one day you bring in a single table with 4 chairs and people can sit and play, either one of the games that you have there, or maybe they pay to rent one of the games that you have, or, hey, if you want to buy it, you can sit here and play it, any of those. And then if it starts to seem like they're getting a little bit of traction, then you go full bore into it. Expand. Open a little snack bar while you're at it.
I know for like Squeaks, whatever, he goes to Lorcana tournaments at his local comic book shop now. He competes in them. And he does pretty well. And I know Lorcana specifically says they want to work only with local shops. But if you're a bigger company like Wizard of the Coast, who does D&D and Magic the Gathering, then you actually want to sign a contract with a big company like this that has a lot of floor plans. So I think this is an option for them. I would like to see them do that. It's just, I don't know if GameStop knows what they're doing, because I know there was one point where we were talking about how they wanted to create stores that had like Zelda themes and stuff like that. Yeah. But that never came to fruition. Yeah. And now they're doing this next nostalgia thing. And I'm just like, yeah, but the nostalgia kids generally don't want to buy limited run games. They want to buy the original cartridges. That's the nostalgia aspect of it. Yeah. So you guys are kind of like not really catching the point, in my opinion. So I don't know. I don't know if they know what they're doing, and I don't know how to help them unless I actually were like go in there and totally remodel the business structure from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. They need a big pivot. They need to make a big business plan for this change, and working with a big company like Wizards of the Coast would be a smart way to invest in their future.
Yeah, or the Pokemon company, one of those two. Yeah. I think that would be a good move. Jonathan, let's go ahead and get into our reviews, and I'm going to have you start us off with Gladiator 2. What'd you think about this movie?
Boys, Gladiator 2, this was a really good movie for me. I don't have anything, I don't think I have anything bad to say about it. The only thing I wish I had done to prepare is watch the original again. It's been so long, so many years. And I think it's because the time we live in, I'm so used to anything that's related to such an old movie, because it's been 15 or 20 years since that one came out. Usually anything that's related to such an old movie, it came out in 2000, so it's been 24 years.
Yeah.
is usually like a complete reboot or a totally different story. This one actually followed directly, almost directly after the original story. So much of it was relevant. And I didn't, remember much, though they recapped a lot of the details, but I think that would have been a lot more effective or, helpful to be fresh in my mind.
More rewarding.
Rewarding. There you go.
Yeah.
And the intro, I gotta say, if I did have a negative, that like pastel painting or watercolor painting or whatever intro they did,
I like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I after a little while I could tell it was telling the story of the original movie in it, but it was just a little bit too. It looks kind of, I don't know, low budget to me, honestly.
I see.
But yeah, other than that, we had amazing acting. I was so happy that the trailer was accurate to the movie, because we've seen recently some trailers that are so misleading and we're kind of pumped about something and then it ends up being a flop, especially with Denzel Washington. He's such a great actor. He's, obviously an expensive actor to have in your movie. And I was worried that he was going to be in like 2 or 3 scenes and that's what they used for the trailers. And then we wouldn't see him again, either get killed off or just be a cameo or something like that. But no, he was one of the biggest characters in the whole movie and just such a phenomenal actor. It was so cool to see him.
It's definitely Denzel Washington's movie. And I've heard from multiple sources. I think even IGN wrote a whole article about this. Like, this movie is to me, I have it a 7 out of 10, which 7 out of 10, I think, in my opinion, is like, that's a really good movie I like to watch. Not great, not revolutionary. Yeah. Really good movie I like to watch. And I'd watch again. Twister kind of level, And so for this, I think if they were to just change the edit to where it wasn't following the kid, but followed Denzel on this path of manipulation and see him kind of twist these different gears the whole way, would have been more rewarding, because then by that third act, when all of a sudden he ramps things up. Okay, I'm going to go to spoilers now. So just heads up, everybody, if you want to skip on this, go ahead and go to Wicked. But when he ramps things up and then he starts to actually like kill off one of the emperors and basically tricks the other emperor and then eventually kills him off. Like, that ramp up was so fast out of nowhere. Yeah. And it was like, if we had gotten a little bit more of him teasing that out, I think that would have been more rewarding. What do you think?
Maybe, yeah. I feel like we did see him once we saw we can kind of see the trajectory, like what his plans were. Yeah. Then it was like, okay, now you see his cards, he's got to play him. So once we knew what his scheme was, that he actually had so much control, then we had to see him flex those muscles, I think. So it's kind of, you aren't sure through the first half or so that you can really trust him. Maybe he's actually a good advisor and not trying to take power. And then it's like, oh yeah, no, he's taking power and here it is, like all in one.
Yeah. I think a good example of that, just to jump in real quick, is the guy what he used to initially take power. The guy that kept getting in gambling debts with him. The whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, oh, it's like a joking thing where the guy's he's gonna get a house and I'm rooting for him. And then there's a certain moment where the turn happens where you're like, oh no, that guy's a senator. He's using him to get into the emperor's court. And then that guy's backing him up when he takes over. It's like, oh, it wasn't about just like fun little story about him getting the guy's house. It was actually part of the play.
Yeah, he's taking Rome. Yeah. He's just so sly about it. I love it. Yeah. Yeah, but there's plenty other good things about the movie. I mean, all the other actors were great. Pedro Pascal, Joseph Quinn, they're all good. I loved the settings the sets that they used. They were so massive. I can't imagine. I mean, the sets might have cost more than the actors. It seemed like it was just huge, especially, I mean, obviously they used the Coliseum or the arena. Yeah. What do you call that?
To a degree, right? Like, you could tell the backs are CGI, stuff like that, but still, like, a lot of the actual on ground stuff is all real. And that kind of much like how Ridley Scott did the 2000 version, like a lot of that was actually in place with just CGI background. Yeah.
So they did a lot of these scenes where it looks like they did at least a good job with the CGI, where it looks like you have this huge city in the background and they would kind of pan through it. I like that they did enough to where you felt the scale of it, but then it wasn't like showy. It wasn't like Avatar where it's got to be all about the CGI and stuff like that. Like, no. We have a good story to get to. We just want you to understand the scope of where you're at and how big this city was for being thousands of years ago, at a time where this didn't exist anywhere else on the planet. Well, cats. But especially I love I think you mentioned it before we even saw the movie, the water battle scenes inside the arena, how they fill it with water. And that you said that was truly something they did back then, right?
That is something that they've done. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so crazy. That just seems like a feat that could not be replicated today, but I mean, sure enough.
They did it there. They also used to do it like Elizabethan theaters too. So like where Shakespeare used to do his plays, they would also flood the theater and do little ship battles there.
That's so crazy. It's crazy, but at the same time, I think, well, if our world wasn't wrapped around technology, if there wasn't wires in the floor, then yeah, why not? If it's brick walls and, dirt on the ground, then sure, fill it with water. It's just going to drain with time and everything will be okay. So
there's this weird thing with Rome, that whole thing that was like in 2023, I think, where it's like the guys think about Rome all the time, which I definitely fall into that myself. There's a weird thing with Rome where like Rome was hyper advanced when you compare it to things just a couple years afterwards. Then we went through the Dark Ages after the collapse of Rome, where like it seemed like technology just stopped. It definitely did stop, but also kind of reversed because the aqueduct system and all this different complex stuff just didn't happen. So then all of a sudden we've slowly built it back to where it felt like it was finally getting back into there in like the late 1700s. But when you go back to that Roman times when it's just 400 AD, and it's like, how are we so freaking advanced? How was people so advanced back then? And I think that's something that's really special about Rome. When you see it on screen, you're just like in wonderment of something that's almost like an Atlantis feeling that comes from being from the Roman society. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we see the same thing when we look at the, US in like the 1800s and we're seeing like the Industrial Revolution here. It's like, there's something so magical about this time. It's unfortunate there's a massive imbalance in power anytime you see those eras.
Same thing with the Rome one, though. I mean, we're watching that. Right.
But it's a time of massive growth and expansion and innovation. So there's always some new changing technology on the horizon that people are pursuing. And I think you see like a city full of hope and drive that's moving forward towards something is exciting to see in a movie and show too.
What did you think about the main character, Paul Mescal, who plays Lucius?
I think he did great for his character, but I think kind of like you were hinting at, his character isn't the whole movie. We follow him, but it's not all about, it's not all about him, really.
Yeah.
There's so much going on within the other characters that he doesn't need to really carry it himself. I think he did great in, pretty much being a lot like his dad, Russell Crowe's character in the previous movie. But yeah, I didn't expect anything more out of him. I think
very serviceable is the term I keep thinking about when I think about him. Like he did the job. Like he got hired to be an actor. He didn't add anything to the role. And I think what's hard is he's compared to Russell Crowe, who pulled the entire scene into his body. Right, like Russell Crowe standing in the middle of that Coliseum for some reason felt bigger than the Coliseum. Like he was such a grand character. And I think Paul kind of is shadowed by the grander characters around him, because while Russell Crowe was the most interesting person in that Coliseum, when we put this guy in the Coliseum, we're watching Pedro Pascal, who's more interesting. We're watching Denzel Washington sitting behind the Emperors. We're watching the Emperors. They're wacky and crazy too. Joseph Quinn, fantastic job. So I think that's hard too. And it's even his mom did a good job of returning character. Sorry.
I think part of the problem in that isn't necessary. Sure, maybe his acting wasn't 100%, but I think the bigger part of the problem is the writing in his character, who his character is.
Very, very true.
Russell Crowe was the white cowboy with the cowboy with the white hat. He stood for pure moral good, and we wanted him to win no matter what. And we knew his death was going to be his release, and we were rooting for him to achieve his goal before that came. Where his son, we don't really know where he stands for like half the movie. We don't know if he knows who he is or what his purpose is. Is he going to try to kill his mom because he doesn't really know who she is or understand, her perspective. Yeah. So he's in a gray area to us throughout most of the movie. So you can't really rally behind him. You're just hoping that he at least disrupts this corrupt government that, we're seeing is getting even worse and before our eyes.
And they force him to be in the gray area, right? Because with his mom being technically on the other side and definitely his stepdad pretty much being on the opposite side, they're definitely in gray area. So they need you to kind of not necessarily say go against them 100%. Really his strongest scenes, I think, are actually in the beginning when he's in the war against Rome. And that was really cool to see him rallying his troops for a real cause. And later on, when he's trying to rally his troops, you're just like, yeah, go out there, do something. I want to see if Denzel kills the Emperor. Or something like that. Like, I want to see what Pedro Pascal does, try to convince you at the last second. Again, very dependent on the characters and in a way that I don't think he had a problem with in the first movie. And when you said it, I realized you're right. It is the writing. It wasn't necessarily his performance. So we got to give it to the writer on that. So let's give a score for this one, John. Personally, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. Not bad, definitely worth the rewatch. And if you're free on a weekend, definitely worth a theater watch. I think you have to watch in theaters.
Yeah, I'm gonna go way higher. I'm gonna say a 9.
9. Okay, wow.
I would definitely watch the original beforehand because there's a lot of ties to it, and just keep it fresh in your mind. But it's just such a solid movie. I would go watch it again if I had free time and nothing else to do on the weekend, which we have a lot of plans coming soon. But I would just go to the theaters again to see it a second time.
Yeah, totally worth a watch. All right, let's go ahead and move into Wicked. Jonathan, you have not had a chance to watch Wicked, right?
I have not. It looked good from the trailers. I know a lot of people don't like musicals. It was very transparent that it's a musical, so I hope people that like them went and saw it, but it looked good to me.
I'll go spoiler free first on this and ask questions as we go along for anything you might have. But my question for you first, Jonathan, did you know that this is a part 1 and there's a part 2 coming later on?
Oh, I had no idea.
I cannot believe that they're not marketing that.
Yeah.
The director's like, I thought everybody would have assumed it was only a part 1. No, it's part 1. The movie doesn't have an ending. It stops halfway through. Okay, and I'm just like, it was very much Spider-Man for me. I'm like, what the fuck?
Right. No, maybe they would have made that in case it was a major flop that they can just not have a part 2 because we didn't tell nobody about it. But you have to at least write a somewhat sound ending to this potentially only story if you're not going to.
It does end in a good spot where you're like, oh, shit's going down. Can't wait to get back to this. Yeah, so it definitely ends with a really good. So let me kind of go over, this will be spoiler free, but I went in, first off, I truly dislike musicals. Yes, I'll watch the Disney movies, Jonathan. Don't get on me. Right. But I just don't care for them at all. And I was surprisingly happy with the Wonka movie that came out a bit ago that had musical elements.
That was a good one.
This one has far more. And the music part of it was, whatever. I'm not a fan of it. I literally just like opened up Pokemon packs on the Pokemon app while it was going on. But everything else was so sound, beautifully done. A lot of physical effects, a lot of practical effects. There was CGI. When there was CGI, I felt like they blended together too much, as in like, oh, it's a gold city with like a shiny sunrise, or like, yellow on yellow, stuff like that. But it starts off in a school environment. Again, I knew nothing about Wicked, guys. I just knew it was something to do with Wizard of Oz. And it's a prequel movie or play about the witches from Wizard of Oz. And so the beginning is kind of like a Harry Potter, which now I'm saying that people who know stuff are like, yeah, Harry Potter got it from Wicked. So forgive me on that. But it's this like school where there's like gifted witches and stuff. And Elba, yeah, is one that like they, not to give any spoilers, but anyways, is very good at being a witch. And she has green skin. She was born with a malformity. And that seems to be the theme of Wicked, is a friendship that is forged with complications of why you're doing something and how you're doing something. And then like personal identity and being alienated and prosecuted. So there's a lot of really interesting themes in this. And again, I'm going in thinking like, I don't care to see people sing and dance. And then by the end, I'm just like, she's right, but don't hurt people. But oh, she has to hurt people. Like, it's complicated, it's really interesting like that. And then there's this whole thing where before Oz stuff, Wizard of Oz or whatever, animals had a lot more of a right to speak and be a part of society. And then what's apparently happening is they're being phased out and they want only humans. And like, for example, there's a goat that teaches a class. They eventually kick him out and a human replaces him. And it's like, the goat's a good professor. He's, but they're losing their rights. And so then you're like, okay, again, there's class disparity. This is a lot more complicated than singing and dancing. And I was highly impressed. And I will admit, I was messaging Thomas being like, this shit sucks because I hate all the singing and dancing. But it grew on me quickly, especially once they got to be on the school and they go to the Emerald City. They made a city that was so badass, very steampunk, but like with more magic and more whimsy. Jeff Goldblum plays the Wizard of Oz. I never have seen a more perfect Jeff Goldblum role.
Character, yeah.
You have to play a fake wizard that's trying to trick everybody and is full of himself. Oh, okay, Jeff Goldblum. It's like, God damn, it's perfect. Yeah.
Do I put on my pantsuit? What are we doing here?
Yeah. Michelle Yeoh plays this kind of like headmistress of the school, who's also in leagues with the Wizard of Oz. And it was a delight. I was really, really impressed with it. If you're not a musical fan, I would give it a shot. If you are a musical fan, I can imagine this has to be like a perfect movie for you. I cannot imagine what you didn't like about this movie.
Same thing. I've never watched whatever this is called.
The Wicked,
the play
or something like that.
Wicked, yeah. Just Wizard of Oz. But is this like an adventure kind of story like Wizard of Oz is, where people come together and they have to make their way trials?
Oh God, not really. Actually, it's a little bit more. At first, I was getting Mean Girls vibes.
Oh, really?
like
In
literally, like there's the popular girl and the nerd and the popular girl team up to be actual best friends. And I was like, this is totally not what I was expecting from this. Is the fact that this is very much a Wednesday. You remember Wednesday on Netflix? It felt like Wednesday, a lot like Wednesday.
Really?
And then eventually it's like, okay, now take those two characters and send them to go meet the president. And the president's actually, a schemer, and everybody worships the president. It was fascinating in that way. It was really pretty interesting.
So how was, like, you mentioned the CGI was a little odd, but like other than that and visual effects, I mean, this was a play at one point, but now they made it a full blown movie. How was it visually?
Great call on that, Jonathan. The fact that it was a play, I think, is why the physical effects work so well. Specifically, like there's one part where Elphaba, God, why am I saying that wrong? Jumps across this big gap, like she uses some of her witch powers. She jump across this big, and it was all done through rope and wire, but they did it really well. And then there's one part where she's flying on a broom, and you're like, son of a gun, that's a tricky move to do. That's amazing. So the physical practical effects were very well done. The classrooms and stuff like that were very beautiful. It was kind of like Harry Potter, but with a little bit more gold, a little bit more color added to everything. But yeah, the CGI was mostly used for background stuff. Even I read a fun fact I actually put out for Challenge Accepted this morning, where the director wanted to use practical effects so much that they planted like over 1 million flowers around the Munchkin town. That's just in the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
But they planted all these flowers just so that the flowers were actually blooming and they didn't have to use CGI for it.
Jeez. That's crazy. I mean, if you're just like have a plane fly over with seed, you just seed it, a few months in advance, that's not so bad. But if you're digging small holes and putting, already blossomed flowers in the ground, that's got to take forever.
Yeah. I wonder if they actually planted seeds. Now I'm thinking about it. Maybe they just waited for it to grow. Who knows?
Yeah, just spread them with a helicopter or something.
Yeah.
I know you kind of touched on it already with the disparaging and whatnot, but what do you think was the overall like moral or message of the story? And was it too obvious, or was it kind of hard to pull out in the story?
I would say there's an obvious one and a not obvious one. I think the not obvious one is the friendship is like this bond, this friendship that's complicated and not necessarily in the same, like your identity might clash with your friendship, but is it still worth having a friendship if it does? I think that's kind of the complicated one. The less complicated one is definitely about the idea that you have to break beyond society's discriminations. And they use the animals in the beginning to kind of sound that, but then also there's, the green skin that she has. And so there's a lot of themes there that I could be like, oh, okay, I see what they're trying to say with our own society. It's hitting the head on the pretty heavily, but it's a play. I think that happens often in musicals. It's like, they're like, oh yeah, it's obvious. And there's definitely a disparity between like class systems. The Munchkins are immediately looked down upon, and it was pretty obvious, but I think well received. I would love to see what other people think about this. Like if you go see this, take the family. I think the family would love this. I would love to hear what like Susan says about this.
Now, you haven't watched any other musicals to compare whether you think this is good or bad compared to other musicals, right?
So I've seen Wonka, and I think that I saw Cats as part of Challenge Accepted.
Oh yeah,
literally as a dare, pretty much, right?
Yeah, right. So how does it compare to Cats?
So I really like Cats music. Actually, I kind of liked Cats. I might like musicals.
There you go. See,
no, but I liked Cats music, especially Memories. I sing that one still. In Wonka, I really liked because of the world building, and that is definitely an aspect of this is the world building.
Okay,
I need to read the Wizard of Oz books because I know it's a lot more lore than what's in the movie, and so maybe the Wizard of Oz books will be a good thing to visit.
I like it. All right, what would you rate this out of 10?
I went with 8 out of 10. Okay, so
that's pretty high. Didn't you just rate the Gladiator as 7?
I know.
Do you think this is better than Gladiator, but you don't like musicals, huh?
I know. It's crazy, right?
Would you go see a live action play of this?
Probably would. Yeah. I think the live action play I wouldn't care about it beforehand, but because of the movie, I'd probably go watch it.
Guys, I think it's official. Frank loves musicals.
I freaking love musical guys. Honestly, I was thoroughly on Instagram and on that new Pokemon app during the music parts. But when it wasn't music parts, it was like watching a new Harry Potter, honestly. So, and then when they went to that city, I was like, oh, wow, it's all steampunk. It looked really neat. The train, you got to see this train, John. It's like this like green bullet train. Yeah. So there is a lot of stuff that you guys would like there. I thought it was quite good. Now I'm seeing a lot of TikToks about Wicked all of a sudden. So the algorithm knows that I'm into it all of a sudden. Yep. And 8 is not perfect, though. Of course, there's a lot of things, and I am biased as in somebody who doesn't quite like musicals, so it might fluctuate a little bit, but just in the production alone, 8 is definitely what it deserves to be. All right, let's go ahead and head over to our interview with Megan from Vigilante Vibes. Megan has a podcast with Vigilante Vibes that is all about inclusivity in Marvel fandoms. It's a place where if you're a Marvel fan at all, you can go without anybody harshing what you already love and not talking smack about, oh, Captain America this or Hulk that. You could just go and enjoy yourself. Megan is available on Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, and alike. Let's go and hear from Megan and Vigilante Vibes right now. Megan, you have this amazing podcast that invites everybody from the fandoms to come and hang out with you. What was your reason for starting this podcast?
Well, I have grown up on Marvel. It's always been my thing. Since I was little, when I didn't even know it was Marvel, I still like the characters. And with time, the fandom has gotten pretty horrid. It's gotten homophobic, sexist, racist, just all these horrible things. And I didn't want that. I wanted to talk about it without any of that. I didn't like listening to podcasts or watching something on TV or on the internet that was like, okay, this is going well, but when is the shoe going to drop? When are they going to say something that's like, okay, well, we're not aligned. So I wanted to have a podcast that gave people just kind of like a safe space, somewhere just to hang out. And it's not just Marvel. I have so many guests from so many fandoms that I'm learning about new fandoms in the process, which is really, really fun too. And all of the people I bring on are also about those non-toxic vibes. So it's nice to see so many creators who are just in for this idea and do want to see changes in all of these fandoms.
Yeah. Why complain when like we get to celebrate escaping all the problems we have in our real life with Marvel and whatnot? So yeah, I'm totally on board with that idea. You're saying you're learning about new fandoms. Is there anything you've learned about your favorite fandom, say Marvel, and a new fandom that you really enjoy as well? Is there something you're learning there?
I'm actually learning more about DC. I am a DC fan, but I haven't dived into the comics, and I'm learning about that. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I've gotten to interview some of the DC comic writers like Kelly Thompson, Tom King. So that's been really exciting too.
Wow, those are some heavy hitters.
Yeah. I know.
Tom King. I'll pick up any Tom King book. That's Tom Taylor, Tom King.
Black Canary, Best of the Best. It's new. I will check that out. It comes out this week. Tom King wrote it. It's incredible. I love it, and he really wants to see it go the distance. So go pick it up.
Yeah.
Off topic. I love Black Canary and Arrow. That's when I first kind of found Black Canary and was like, okay, a lot cooler than I ever knew before. So I'm on board with that for sure. So you have this podcast, Vigilante Vibes. What is your plans for social media? What's your plans for? Because I know on social media you are crazy active. You're always going out there posting stuff. What are your plans for the future of Vigilante Vibes?
Just to make a difference. I don't expect anything huge like a payment of any kind or anything big like that, because it's you guys know, it's such a competitive field. This is kind of just my passion. I just want to see it make a difference. That's it. And if it changes one person's perspective on the fandom, then I'm good.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. You got any questions, Thomas? I don't want to keep cutting you off there.
No, I was not prepared for this. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I just have a statement more, but I guess I do feel that from your post. Like I feel that you do want to give people just an open space to talk, but also to celebrate. You know, I guess sometimes it can seem cheesy to people to celebrate things or just love something. And I very much want to push back against that just internally as to who I am. And I feel that from you. Like you really do want to give people this opportunity, just like share why you love this thing. And I don't know. That's nice. It is refreshing.
Thank you. I think I do try to go out of my way to support other creators. Like I'll randomly post like, where can I follow you? Where can I support you? Because I think the more non-toxic spaces we have takes away from where the toxicity is. So I do want everyone to celebrate. I do want everyone to enjoy what they're doing. I don't want you to be belittled because you like this or you don't.
Where do you choose the next place you want to spotlight? Is there fan submission, or is it you just kind of following what you're most interested in?
Comics ones are usually drawn by whatever comics I just read, and you reach out to the creator and then you try to collaborate. With the other stuff, it's what I'm into at that current moment, or it's what the people I'm bringing on want to talk about. Like last night, I interviewed someone named Jeremy Plummer. He's a great comedian, hilarious guy. If you haven't checked him out, check him out. He wanted to talk about New Comic Book Day, the things that have come out and that will come out. So we kind of just played off that for a long time.
I like that. Yeah, it's a lot more conversational that way. You're inviting everybody, including your listeners, in on the conversation.
Yeah, I like to just kind of make it free flowing, not like have this huge editorial written out. Like I've done it in the past, and you're just reading to a screen. It's not fun at all. It just feels so cheesy to me.
What is your go-to podcast that you find comfort in?
Mine. I'm just kidding.
That's always the real answer when we ask that to another podcaster, but we can't say it.
True story. I never listen to mine. I cannot do it. Never. Yeah. I overthink things. I have too much anxiety, and I'll be like, why'd I say that? But I used to listen to The Office Ladies, which has...
Oh, that's a good one.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
But lately I've taken on so many people I said I would follow. So I just kind of like listen to every single episode. Like I have it going off my phone, like when I'm cleaning the house or I'm doing anything. So I don't listen to a specific one, but one I will say is really, I love these guys. They're called the Fundamentals. Same non-toxic vibes, same cool people. They're incredible. If you also haven't checked them out, you should.
Nice. I will.
Fundamental. That does sound
Yeah.
Is there anything you find like in your own life that is not Marvel or fandom related, but you feel like it really that you bring into your podcast? Like things going on in outside life?
There's a few. I have a business that's called Decor for Nerds. I make decor for nerds. Like I just made a coffee table with refurbished comic books, that kind of thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, so my life is really, really nerdy, except the part of me that really loves the UFC, but I think that's what drives my toxicity. So
yeah, that must be, is that like a personal challenge? I mean, like UFC, it has a certain, not everybody, but it has some certain personalities. Does it make you also want to combat toxicity everywhere? Or does it give you motivation to kind of combat it in your comic focused life?
Everywhere, because when I dive too far into it, like if I go into the Facebook groups or the comments and people are like, Yuri sucks, I'm like, oh, I'm about to roast you. I'm like, there it is. I see it now. I see the toxicity and how it starts because I could see it with me. So it does make me super aware of how it starts and how you can take it to heart.
It's amazing. Anytime like a post does well or something like that, and it doesn't take long before you're like, oh man, this is not going to be good. Because as soon as it starts to get past the small algorithm and into the next level of algorithms, then it's like, we're going to get those assholes that just want to say something for the sake of saying something. And it's like, there's no reason to be toxic, but there's people who get the joy out of being toxic,
Yeah, that's my daughter.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
That's a good reason right there.
You got a cool mama.
Yeah, to focus on non-toxicity right there.
Yeah, there's two of them. They're both fighting over their bag of chips right now. I guess they realized they could break into that cabinet. So that's great.
Well, we won't keep you for too much longer then so that you can go fend off the chips.
Yeah.
Megan, we really appreciate you joining us today, both on Challenge Accepted, and then we're going to share this across all the network as well. One more time, where can people find you?
You can find me anywhere on most social medias under Vigilante Vibes Podcast. Not on Twitter. I may not be on Twitter much longer, so I don't know. But Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, you can find me in my non-toxic nerd culture group called the Nerd Haven. It's 54,000 like-minded nerds who just want to chill in the non-toxic vibes. You can find me on YouTube, Vigilante Vibes Pod, and on Apple and Spotify under Vigilante Vibes Podcast.
All right, so as soon as Thomas, you're in charge of figuring out Facebook. I'm so bad at Facebook. You're in charge of that one. I'm putting you in charge of I'll take care of Threads and Blue Sky.
The guy who doesn't use Facebook. Yeah, I'll figure it out.
That's my Facebook.
I'm so bad
is my
about
bread
it.
and butter. I love it. I hate it, but I love it.
I wish I was good at it.
Yeah. Well, especially if you find like-minded people. I'm sure it's a lot better than some of the stuff we probably see.
Yeah.
I got some uncles I need to unfollow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh God. All right, so everybody, I want you to stop what you're doing right now. Go into the description and follow up on Vigilante Vibes and drop a review and a subscribe. Make sure you start listening today and check out everything that Megan has to offer. Again, Megan, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I've known Thomas for a while and I've been a big fan, and it was so nice to meet you. So hopefully we can do this again. Hopefully you guys will come on my podcast, and then we'll pick another movie to make Thomas cry. I think that'll be nice.
Yeah, done. Pretty easy, it sounds like.
Fun to
yeah. Yep.
The Geek Freaks Pet Pantry, and what we do is we talk about a different one of our animals each week and push people to go over and donate money to the Elk Grove Animal Shelter. We just hit our first $100. Thank you guys so much for your donations. We appreciate that. Our goal is 1,000 by the end of December, so we'll see how that goes. But last time we heard about Elsa, the last time you were on, we heard about Elsa. Mm-hmm. This time we're going to talk about Aang. Aang, who is literally from the Elk Grove Animal Shelter, which usually is sleeping on that chair, but this time he's not, of course. He's probably sleeping underneath me. I'll tell another story at the end that's even, it might be that. Anyways, so it was the pandemic, and the Elk Grove Animal Shelter needed people to pick up dogs because they had a hard time with the pandemic, as all shelters did. And I was perusing, and I kept seeing dogs like, it was a little bit too big. I had Beans at the time, and Beans was a big dog. And by chance, I came across one night, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I checked the site, and they had 3 they're called Puggles. It's half pug, half beagle. And as if a calling from God, they were named Aang, Sokka, and Zuko. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, that is great. And Aang was the cutest one, and he has a lighter color, and he actually looks more like Beagle than the other 2. And so I right away emailed, like, yeah, I would gladly take Aang. I'll take the other 2 too. This house is plenty big enough. I was all excited. And so they got a hold of me, and they said, well, first off, you can only have 1, and Aang is already called for. Would you like Sokka? And so I was like, I'd be happy to have Sokka. So, but the way they do things at the Elk Grove Animal Shelter is you go the day before you adopt an animal, and you have to meet the animal. And of course, this all makes sense. You meet the animal, make sure you bond well with the animal, and then they neuter or spade them, and then you get them the day after, which is a tough day for them. Like, oh yeah, my forever home. Wait, what's going on next? And so I met Aang, and he's freaking out hearing his name so many times. And he jumped up into my arms, and did not want to be put back down. I didn't want to put him back down either. And it was kismet. That was definitely going to be a dog I owned. And so, sure enough, went through the work. He got neutered. The next day, brought him home, and he's been a best friend of mine for years now, since the pandemic. It was by far the best thing out of 2020, which is not a high bar. But yeah, the Elk Grove Animal Shelter, they did all those services and everything like that, and they helped a bunch of dogs during the pandemic. It was fantastic. And you guys can help too. So the link's in the description if you guys want to donate now. Again, we're going to be running this charity through the end of the year, and every little penny counts. So we really appreciate the help. But yeah, that's the Elk Grove Animal Shelter. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Again, the Pet Pantry, link in the description so you guys can donate to the Elk Grove Animal Shelter and help them as they find forever homes for dogs, cats, and alike. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week at Fan Expo. See you then. Bye.
Bye.